I did an analysis many years ago of Einstein. We created a concept once called the Einstein effect. We were analyzing what made Einstein so amazingly powerful and successful. And the conclusion was that it wasn't really just his intellect. He obviously had more intellectual power than most, but it were the other attributes. He had great humor. He had great curiosity. He was always focused on balanced life. He would take naps. He liked music. He would try to learn anything he didn't know, even if he wasn't good at it. And I think most people today, they have unknowingly compartmentalized themselves in such a rigid and rigorous sort of just a constraint.
Greetings and welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I am Espen today. I am joined by one of my personal heroes, if I may say so, Jay Abraham. This is going to be a really exciting conversation. Today we're going to talk to one of the masters of business. This is the $21.7 billion man and highest paid marketing consultant in the world, a proven business leader and top executive coach in the United States. And not just in the United States, his reach is global. As a founder and CEO of the Abraham Group, Jay has spent his entire career solving complex problems and fixing underperforming businesses. He's significantly increased the bottom line of over 10,000 clients in more than 1,000 countries, and the list goes on and on. This is across 7,200 sub-industries worldwide. Jay has dealt with virtually every type of business scenario and issue and challenge that you can imagine. He studied and solved almost every challenge out there by innovating. And this is really exciting because when I first heard of Jay Abraham, I looked up this video on YouTube, and it was something from the 80s that was just like, hey, this is Jay Abraham. And I saw Tony Robbins was in there. He was just raving about Jay. And I thought, hang on, this is interesting. And the deeper I looked into Jay's work, the more blown away I was to his mastery and his skills, particularly in business innovation and also marketing. So today we're going to have a chat about all of the above. And if you have any interest at either starting a business or scaling a business and or being successful or financially free, this is certainly a conversation that you would like to lean into. I want to say a special thank you. I'm smiling a lot right now, Jay, because this is a real honor for me. How are you today, mate?
I am better than I was because you have gratified my very frail ego. Thank you.
My pleasure, sir. Give credit where credit's due. Okay, I want to start right off the bat. Your career spans across many decades and numerous industries. What's been for you the most significant personal evolution that you've experienced in your professional journey?
I think probably in a nutshell, it's mastering hopeless curiosity. I was very early in the game, accidentally, of mastering what I'd call range, understanding an unimaginable spectrum of things, not just different industries, but strategy, business model, psychology of market, distribution, leadership, trust building, all kinds of things, never really doing it to optimize my earning capability, but just to optimize my my own curiosity and my intellectual capability. But as it turned out, today, it's given me an enormous advantage because I have context of reference and I can look at almost any kind of a business situation, which ultimately is a human, a psychological situation, because motivation, concentration, attention, trust, all up here and it gives me a great advantage. And I always had that kind of joyous curiosity because I loved two things. I loved learning about anything I didn't understand, and I loved being in the presence of somebody who would humble me, who was much, much brighter. And that adage that's pretty trite today about you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, you want to be the dumbest, has been an unintentional sort of default attitude. I've been fortunate enough to be the dumbest person in a lot of rooms.
Well, you're not the dumbest person in this room. Let's be clear. I'm the lucky one in that sense then. So yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I know throughout your career, you've amassed tremendous fortunes and you've helped a lot of other people do the same. How does one, in your eyes, balance between tremendous success, impact and abundance and what you come across as, which is, maintaining that humble, integral nature?
Well, I've had a couple. I mean, I've had more mentors than people imagine. I mentored people, but I've had hundreds of mentors in various ways, and I listened and I absorbed, and a little bit of osmosis works. So I think the first thing is a couple of very wonderful adages that I will treasure, and I have for 45 years. One said to me, Jay, you can lose your money, your wealth, and keep your integrity, and somebody will always back you. But if you try to keep your wealth and you sell out your integrity, you'll never get your integrity back. So that was one of the foundations. Another one said, every time you interact with any person for any reason, for any amount of time, your first obligation is to make them better off because you were in their life. And you can't make somebody better off if you're not aware of what really they would value. The next said that you always deal with human beings and you afford them dignity, significance, relevance, and respect. Another one said, and I love this one, that your first obligation is to try to examine, understand, appreciate, acknowledge, respect how other people see life, even if you don't necessarily agree, because that is their reality. And if that's their reality and this is yours, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge it to them so they open up and at least have a window of receptivity and open-mindedness to try to embrace yours. I can go on and on, but those are a couple that have always stuck with me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That makes sense. I've realized in my own journey as I've become more and more successful, there's a little chip on the shoulder sometimes, and then I swing over to now it's time to, let go of the attachment of the financial success and come back to the basics. And so I find that has been a really beautiful, interesting balance, and to keep humbling myself, as I climb the ladder, so to say. I've got a question that's a little bit different, and I think you're probably one of the best people in the world to answer this question.
Okay.
Let's give it a go. As we know, the world has changed, and as far as I understand, a lot of the Fortune 500 companies, including major successful businesses around the world, were founded during times of either financial difficulty or a global change in the markets. What financial terrain do you think we're heading into, and what advice do you have to stand on the shoulders of giants such as yourself to be able to capitalize on what is coming?
Well, if you look at most great companies, and you're right, they were founded in terms of adversity. The first thing is don't get intimidated, and also don't get paralysis. Always know that in any game you're playing, and business is the ultimate contact sport, that there's always going to be winners and there's always going to be losers. And you start by saying, I don't want to be a victim, I want to be a victor. And the first thing you have to understand is most things that happen in a life and a business, they're always based on the following. 2-3% are acts of God that nobody can control. The rest are the result of decisions you make or don't make, actions you take or don't take, forces, factors, principles, effects that you either recognize and harness or you let whipsaw you. So you got to keep aware of drivers in changing environments. Then you've got to decide, is my industry growing or not? And if it's growing, but it's ultra competitive and technology is taking over, you can't be ostrich-like. You have to resign yourself to never be a follower, but to always be a leader. Because leaders, when they understand how to gain advantage, will always prevail. And advantage is achieved by understanding your market better, understanding your delivery mechanisms better, understanding value propositions better. And there's no denying that AI is going to become a predominant factor. So if you don't really try to understand what's happening with it, and I'm not purporting to be an expert, but there's AI that can do great research. There's AI that can frame things. There's AI that can create publications for you. There's all kinds of AI distillation, segmentation, research, intelligence, communication. If you don't have the interest or the technological capability, hire somebody that does. The most important thing to do is not be an island. And I teach something that's probably appropriate here, but it has to be interpreted. So in most industries, Espen, there's a concept called best practices. Most people know what it is. It means the best practices, process, system, procedures in an industry. But there's a fallacy. If you are a business, we're using a business, but I'll analogize it to a human being. If you are a business that gets a short window of advantage and you learn a singular or a couple of best practices ahead of most of your competitors, you have a window for 3 months, 6 months, a year. But sooner or later, the whole concept of best practices is everybody's going to do it. And then it just becomes standard operating procedure. You have to do it, but it gives you no advantage. It might give you a manufacturing advantage, but you pass it on. It might be better for your stockholders, but it's not going to give you any competitive advantage. So you have to be aware of where breakthroughs really come from. Breakthroughs almost always come from outside your comfort zone. They rarely come from your industry. They rarely come from what you normally do. They come from traveling outside your industry, your comfort zone, your familiarity reference base. If you look in history, fiber optics changed telecommunication, but it wasn't developed by telecommunication. It was developed by aerospace and borrowed. FedEx created a whole industry by borrowing what's called the hub and spoke check clearing process that our Federal Reserve Bank uses to clear checks in the morning so people can't bounce checks. Ballpoint pen or roll-on deodorant came from it. One or the other. Rogaine came from pimple medicine. Viagra came from heart medicine. The most successful baby buggy in the country came from the collapsible wheels on an airplane. So you got to be willing to open your mind to what's going on outside of where you live. And you don't just want to do and master or become aware of what everybody else in your area, whether it's your career, whether it's your business, whether it's your relationships in life, because that's not going to give you the breakthroughs that give you advantage, and that's what we want is maximum ethical advantage. With regard to the future, it's going to change. It can't help but change. It's going to change for many reasons: technological reasons, political reasons, geopolitical reasons. The economy is going to change, but we have to decide that two things. If we believe that and you could fill in the blank, our industry or our career are going to stay vital, but we are going to have to get re-educated or expand our knowledge or reset our skill sets, you don't wait until it's too late and then play catch up, because then you're stressed and you will not in any way be masterful at it. There's a lot of trite cliches that we have here. I don't know if they translate in Australia, but one of them is the time to repair the roof is when the sun shines. And it's in human nature. You study the mind. There's a bizarre facet to human nature. We tend to be not preventative oriented. We tend to be curative oriented. Now, that is unfortunate, but you've got to go against your psychological predisposition, because if you wait to figure out what's happened after it's happened, you are going to have a very difficult job playing catch up. Mm-hmm. The time to break out of your comfort zone is right now as it's all happening. And it's very fascinating. I'm not technological at all. I get intimidated, but I also get fascinated. And there's a famous book that was out about 3 or 4 years ago called Range, Range. It was written by a prominent author whose last name is Epstein. I don't remember the first. And his premise was that the people who will own the maximum success in the second half of the 21st century are the ones that will gain and possess the most range, because they can't be singular anymore, because the issues, the challenges, the opportunities, the complexities can't be solved by a single understanding. And what you understand from the past, hindsight, what you understand right now, insight, even your limited industry constrained tunnel vision about foresight isn't enough, because everything has changed. There's such new combinations, new hybrid, new mindsets, new decision-making criteria. If you don't control it, it will control you. I know these are macro answers, but the first thing is, don't be intimidated. Be excited. Learning, discovering, being curious, being a sponge. That's what you did when you were a child, and that's how you grew and you expanded. Then we become adults and we get inhibited, or our definition of growth and development and possibility are really very restrictive. They have nothing to do with the scope that's really possible. I don't know if I'm being too abstract or not.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting. I mean, people refer to you as the $21.7 billion man. So you've done finance as well very successfully. In my life, I've realized it seems like patterns, seasons, cycles, or maybe psychology, but it seems like, hang on, I'm doing really well. 3-4 years, I'm booming, I'm building, and I'm getting up there. And I feel like I've not been able to actually innovate fast enough. Like you said, repair the roof when the sun is shining. So then there's a dip. And then there's a correction, financially, strategically, reinventing the businesses. I know there's different psychology levels and different strategy levels for the different, 5 million versus 10 million type business. Have you realized or noticed the pattern in your life where that the correction and or the glass ceiling is going to come? Or have you discovered a way to bust through that so that you don't have to have the dip? What's your experience in the matter?
Well, in investing, they call it the bubble. Before the bubble breaks, everybody is doing the same thing. Everyone's got a .com, or everybody's flipping real estate, or everybody's, borrowing all they can out of their house. But I think the time to start really looking to break away from the norm is when everybody's starting to do the same thing. And not when it's gotten to where it blows up. And I think most people get too complacent, because the time to do it is when you can afford to do it. And afford to do it means many things. One, you're not desperate to play catch up or shift, because you just can never do that well when you're reactive. Number two, you don't have the economic stability. And number three, you won't have any advantage. If you say in the beginning, okay, everyone is starting to do this, that tells me it's time for me to figure out what's beyond that, or what's next, or where's the correlation, where's the connection that's going to take you to. There's that, and I think Tony Robbins used to say it all the time about Wayne Gretzky, the hockey great. He never, ever went to where the puck was hit. He went to where he perceived it was going to end up. And if you think about billiards, not pool with holes, but billiards, every shot somebody takes is designed to set up the next shot. And I think if you look at a life, a career, a business, that way, you don't have the luxury. You never have, but today you don't have the luxury of being complacent about anything. And you shouldn't indulge yourself in reactive anything when you have the ability to have a mental sort of a compass that says, okay, it's time to change course. Everybody is doing this. It's only a matter of time before it either becomes standard operating procedure and I have no advantage, or it blows up. And then don't wait and enjoy the process of investigating, intelligence gathering, research, development, discovery, expanded knowledge.
Makes sense. How often do you innovate? If you were to say times, would you say every 2 years, every year, every 5 years? I mean,
Well,
it depends on the industry, of
I
course.
innovate all the time, but my definition of innovate, I do it with my clients, it's not as technologically predicated. I think innovation is nothing more than being able to create more benefit advantage, and it can be done many different ways. I mean, it can be done with 24/7, do it yourself online ordering. It can be done with with AI communication. Or it can be done just by basically supporting somebody better. It can be you innovate if you're more sensitive to your fellow man, woman, partner, lover. You innovate if you basically are there 24/7 on weekends when everybody else stops at 5 o'clock. You innovate if you answer the phone with a human being again and you acknowledge somebody instead of, push this, push that, sorry, or, there are people, you innovate if you bring greater advantage, benefit, protection, enhancement, or entertainment enrichment to somebody that they value, they recognize, they perceive to be very valuable, and they want and only can get from you. So it doesn't have to be technologically, it can be, but there's so many other dimensions of innovation.
Makes sense. Okay, good. So, I mean, as you say, just deliver more value and stand out in the marketplace, and you're going to be, innovating anyway.
But you have to know how your target audiences define value, because that's a big disconnect. A lot of people decide that what they value, their audience, their market, their employees, their vendors, their loved ones are going to value the same way, and they don't really understand that they're way out of alignment.
Mm-hmm. So do you survey the marketplace to find those answers?
What I do is many things, and it's a wonderful process. I can share it because it's pretty cool. We gave birth to it years ago. We called it the Amazon.com School of Research, Marketing, and Business Dominance. And basically, you take the topic that you are involved in, your business or your interest. You go on Amazon and you first look at all the bestsellers for the last 3 to 5 years, the top 20 or 30. You look at the titles, the subtitles, because unfortunately most books sell because of the premise and the promise as opposed to the content. You look at the table of contents, you scrape it all and you put it into a column. Then you go on all these books and you look at the reviews, the 5s and the 0s, because when people are passionate, happy or dishappy, or unhappy, they're mad or thrilled, they're subconscious. You're the progenitor of understanding the human condition. The subconscious overrides the conscious, and you can remember anytime anyone was ever really very, very exhilarated, happy, or pissed off, they expressed it when you backed out the vulgarity and the cuss words. They expressed it with beautiful metaphors, similes, clarity, and visual analogies. So you look at the 5s and the 1s, because that's when people love that topic or that book or that message or hated it. You put it into 2 separate columns, the positives and negatives. Then you go on some discussion groups where people are talking about it. Then you go on any of your competitors, if you are a business person, if it's in your life or parenting or anything else, you go to any person who stands for that and you look at their reviews in the comments. Now you get you got all this stuff that you pick up and you aggregate 3 things: topics of books, subtopic, and chapter titles, because those are all positives that reflect what people want but have never necessarily verbalized. Then you've got the group of all the things positive, all the things negative that were the passionate stuff. Now you look at all these and you see commonalities, 80-20 rule. You see the top 20%, and those probably represent with pretty profound accuracy what's going on in the mind of the people you're trying to impact, reach, get hired by, sell to, date, whatever it is. It gives you language patterns, because so many people try to say the same thing superficially to one another. But in truth, when you are able to express, resonate, articulate what I've been trying to get closer to or away from, and why, in ways nobody ever has, immediately I think that person, that company, that, that man, that woman, they get me. They understand me. I am very attracted to either them, their proposition, because this is the first person. They don't go this way, but that's what they're processing. This is the first time anyone's really encapsulated what I'm trying to say here. And if you do that repetitively, it gives you profound advantage, because nobody does that.
Makes sense. I mean, you just took market research to a whole new level. It totally makes sense. And thank you. I will apply exactly that strategy here, Jay.
With all my clients, and it has never failed. You use it for communication, scripts, landing pages, emails, subject lines, bullets. Anything you do, you use it to own mind share, heart, love, parenting, all kinds of things.
Excellent. Now, you talk about a concept, Jay, that you refer to as beyond exponential. I call it quantum business. I don't know how spiritual and or philosophical you want to go, but I'd like to know, what is your take? What does beyond exponential mean for you? And what is your take on the spiritual aspect of business, please?
Well, I think that in business, it's an exercise in what I call the 3 Ps. If you don't go into business with less than an unhedged amount of passion, purpose, possibility, you can't possibly be your best. You can't optimize. And I think that the key to it, we created something 30 years ago called the strategy of preeminence. And it's a way to elevate yourself to the role in the eyes of the target audience that you're trying to deal with as the only viable choice they can make, the most trusted advisor for life, the ultimate resource they could turn to. And it's got many dimensions, but one of the dimensions is that most people mistakenly fall in love with either their industry, their company, their product, the goal to be the fastest growing company or the biggest stock on the stock exchange. But if instead you fall in love with the people you serve, and in your mind and in the mind of your entire team, if you are running the business, owning the business, they're all on a crusade or a mission, and they see the impact, the future-paced impact of your product or service or company or people in the lives of the people you're dealing with, and how it transformed that. It protects them, enriches them, it gives them more happiness, healthfulness, longevity, pleasure, possibility, then you really are having the most meaningful impact. We've always taught, we used to teach very large and very expensive seminars, and our premise in the advertising would always be dramatically increase your revenue and multiply your profits even greater. That was what everybody thought they wanted. But we would finally, when we got their trust, teach them that the way to do it is become preeminent. The way to do it is fall in love with the people you serve. The way to do it is never try to squeeze everything you can out of your team. Grow everything you can, their capability, their development, their happiness, their richness, their success, even if they end up leaving you. We gave them a bunch of very soft things that were really the progenitors of getting the hard things, not being hard, being difficult, but the money, the profitability, the value, the wealth that you wanted. And when people did it, they did great. But I always learned that, and it's probably going to conform with what I think you believe, that we are rewarded in life financially and psychically in direct proportion to the quantity, quality, consistency of problems we solve and opportunities we make possible for others. Oh. And I don't think people really understand that. And that's the greatest fulfillment. I studied lots of things in my life. And one of the very great distinctions that I got from somebody I spent about $500,000 with, it was a psychologist when I was struggling earlier in my life. He gave a very great insight. He said, the majority of people are what's called end product oriented. They think that making $1 million or getting the hottest person as their lover or spouse or having, the most toys or whatever is going to really transform their joy and happiness. And that if they are unlucky enough to achieve what they delusionally think is this great end game, it's anticlimactic. The angels aren't going to trumpet, the heaven's not going to open, Nirvana is not going to, to trickle down. All their problems aren't going to disappear. It's anticlimactic. But if they realize that the process, the interaction you have with everybody and anybody, doesn't matter if they're a billionaire entrepreneur or whether they're a housekeeper, the process is as good as it gets. And if you learn to enjoy, appreciate, contribute, and receive from every process you ever engage in, it makes living worth living, and it makes every day joyous. Even if you have setbacks, they don't destroy you. You learn from them. You find them as challenges. You don't go into them defeatistically. And I don't know if my answer is what you wanted to hear.
Very happy with this answer. I think this, again, it's not about the destination. It's more about the journey, the experience of the journey. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it is. And that when you reframe the drivers of the values that really fuel your life, it changes everything. You're not going, if I never get, to be 5 or 10 million, I'll never be happy. If I never get the job of senior vice president, I'll never be happy. If I never get to go to Paris on first class, I'll never be happy. Those are great things that can stimulate achievement. But if you wait for those things to happen and think that when that has occurred, that's the be all, and do all, and you think it's going to have that much permanent residual fuel for the rest of your life, you're going to be terribly, terribly disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Who are some of the people that you look up to these days that you seek inspiration from or get inspiration from?
There's a lot of them. I really like somebody like Stephen M.R. Covey, who's the world authority on trust building. I have many expert friends, Dr. Alan Bernard, who is probably the preeminent authority on the theory of constraint and how to remove the key bottleneck that holds back enormous achievement. I still do something every year with Tony Robbins. Here in the United States, there's a wonderful person who's one of the panelists on our Shark Tank, Damon John, African-American man, wonderful human being. Yeah. I have clients all over the world, so I just get to see this wonderful cross section of humanity, and I think we're somewhat magnetic. We attract pretty much what we want or who we are, and I'm pretty lucky. I get people who come to me who have high standards of value, ethos, but they live their life at a more rarefied level of humanity and humility. I have very few people that I deal with that you would call arrogant or conceited or unapproachable. They're just wonderful human beings, good role models for everybody, and they all are really pretty much the top of their world, but they don't flaunt it. They still appreciate everybody. I did an analysis many years ago of Einstein. We created a concept once called the Einstein effect. We were analyzing what made Einstein so amazingly powerful and successful. And the conclusion was that it wasn't really just his intellect. He obviously had more intellectual power than most, but it were the other attributes. He had great humor. He had great curiosity. He was always focused on balanced life. He would take naps. He liked music. He would try to learn anything he didn't know, even if he wasn't good at it. He was so curious. And I think most people today have unknowingly compartmentalized themselves in such a rigid and rigorous sort of just a constraint that it's actually very sad. I don't think as many people are as happy as they think. I don't think they have the joy or the fulfillment, and they definitely don't see all the possibilities. And I also think that we've lost track of the fact that wealth is not merely denominated financially. Money is very essential, and inflation makes it even more necessary. But after a certain point, it doesn't change your life. You can only sleep in one bedroom, drive one car. I came from a humble background, and I always wanted a lot of exotic cars. So one time I had 10 of them, and all it did was sit in my garage and driveway gathering dust. Every time I drove the exotic ones, they would break. I'd have to have them towed. It cost me thousands of dollars. My insurance was $40,000 a year. And I was afraid to drive them very far because they would break down. And every time I drove them fast, I'd get a ticket. And my insurance rate would go up more. And I think that we really don't allow ourselves to grow and develop as complete human beings anymore. And I think we've lost a lot of connection. One of my friends is a famous medical doctor who works with ADD and ADHD entrepreneurs and sales professionals. And he says we've lost our ability to gain adequate amount of vitamin C, which he says is connection, real interpersonal, live human connection. We send text, we send emails, we don't respond timely, we don't honor our commitments to people, we book appointments we don't show up for, we take jobs we don't show up for. We don't have a lot of self-integrity anymore, but we definitely don't have much direct communication with one another, and I think that's very, very, very difficult. Our Surgeon General, I think today or yesterday, just came out with a strong recommendation that a number of social media apps start coming with warnings to parents that they are causing so many psychological problems, depression, suicide, potential suicide, antisocial behavior, just horrible actions, just all kinds of things. But I think it's part of it is we don't, younger people, and I think older ones too, they can get by now on their computer, on their phone. They don't have to ever talk to people, meet people. If I don't want to go to the grocery, I don't have to. I can just order online. If I don't want to basically take my car in to be repaired, I just go to an app and they'll pick it up and deliver it. If I don't want to sell it or buy, I can buy it or sell it online. I can sit in the safe harbor, very, very constantly constraining environment of this dehumanized and sort of a receptacle that I now live in. And I think it's very unhealthy.
I love how you brought this up, Jay, because I started a company 8.5 years ago, and it was exactly about that connection. And then obviously about 5 or so years ago, COVID hit and we were forced into separation. We couldn't gather. That had a major impact on us in many ways, particularly in Australia, speaking for, what I saw. I owned a franchise of 10 multidisciplinary health clinics, and everything just had to stop. And what we saw with our patients and our students is this tremendous amount of mental and emotional suffering because of separation by the lack of connection. So I created this educational institution, this academy that brings people together in personal development. And what we found was quite incredible. It really was indeed about this connection piece.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that we tend to be too self-consumed or busy for our own good. And I think that if we can slow down, the adage about slow down to go faster, I think there is the faster part of that analogy would be richer. And richer is not necessarily financial denominated. It's more emotional fulfillment, more purpose, more sense of being, and having some relevance to the fact that we're alive. And I think that it's very important to go back sort of to the beginning and just say, I want to be part of my world. I don't want to just be a hermit, insulating myself from everything. And I want to appreciate. And I think growth, there's the adage, and you probably know it. It's, you talk about quantum physics, you expand or you contract, you grow or you die, you multiply or diminish. But I think that is as true as a human being. If you don't keep growing, because there's no such thing as constant, so you're going to regress. If you don't keep expanding your humanistic side, your humanity, your empathy, your compassion, your self-compassion, then it's going to go the other way. Same thing in career, same thing in business, same thing in relationships. And most people get to a point where they stop. What I was going to say was that I just lost my track. I'm big time ADD. I'm like, I got the of a mosquito who's had a brain. What do they call it when the old days when they put a poker through your eye and I can't remember what it was called. But
tell us about this. This is good. Tell us about how do we deal with this in business? ADD. We've got lots of energy. We're trying to focus, but our mind goes in many directions. And right now, I'd like some advice if you don't mind. I'm pushing 5 mil. I'm just coming through a glass ceiling. I want to innovate. I want to go global. I want to bring this healing curriculum to people. We've done the research. We've partnered with research with the universities here in Australia, and we want to take this to the next level. What are the key strategies to take a company from 5 mil to 10 mil when it comes to marketing, reach, and sales? Let me ask you that question, please.
Yes, well, I'll tell you the one default answer I give everybody, and it's what I call derivatives of power partnering. You either partner, you joint venture, you co-brand, you become the recommended provider, you become you're endorsed by organizations, individuals. When you think about it, and it's really interesting, your problem, i.e. your objective, your goal, is always going to be the solution to someone's bigger one. They just don't know it. All over the world, there are people that have different issues that your model, your franchise, your methodologies, your systems will fill. I'll give you a simpler answer or example. Many years ago, I used to do seminars on a worldwide basis. I was in China, and I did a very expensive seminar, and I always did Q&A at the end, and a young man came to the mic, very nice young man, and through translation, he said, what do you do if the bank won't lend you money to grow? And I asked him for some context, and it turned out he was a small, as he called it, local motorcycle manufacturer. Now, only in China, where a single city might be 100 million population, would you be a local motorcycle manufacturer. And he wanted, if he could get money, to go all over Asia, set up a factory, put offices in 10, 12, 15 countries, hire salespeople, recruit dealers, and sell motorcycles all over Asia. And when he told me, I said, okay, what's the problem? He goes, I told you, I can't get the money from the bank. And I said, you don't need money. Go on a road trip all over Asia. There you got to find big companies who are complementary. They're not doing the same thing, but they're doing something related. They have a big factory they're not fully utilizing. They have representation in many countries. They have salespeople. They have dealers, and partner with them because they are not fully utilizing the sunk costs they have in their capacity. About 15 months later, I came back to that city in China. The young man came back to the mic, and he was smiling like I can't even describe, we call it a Cheshire cat. And I said, why so happy? And he goes, I did what you said. I went all over. When I got to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, I found Asia's largest lawnmower manufacturer. They had a massive factory they were underutilizing on the second shift. They had offices in 10 countries. They had sales forces. They had thousands of dealers. We made a deal where all I had to do was come and bring the tools and the dies, which if people don't know what those are, that's the metal that forges the parts that are put into creating products. I had to teach people in the factory how to manufacture them. I had to teach the salespeople in the different countries how to recruit dealers and teach the dealers how to merchandise and sell the motorcycles. And he said in our first full year of doing this, we both made, not sold, but made over $20 million profit. There's going to be people for whom what you've got is filling a void that they don't always know they have, but they need. You just have to find them. We used to teach massive programs on partnerships, strategic alliances, joint ventures, recommended provider status. And there's 43 different ways you can do it. And just to give you a very simple example, I'm talking about when I was in the seminar business. I was in the seminar business for maybe 4 years. During that period of time, we did approximately $250 million of revenue. That's $250,000, and that's 15, 20 years ago. And the only way we did it, I spent almost no money. I got every company on 5 continents that sold entrepreneurial training that was less expensive than mine to partner with me to their past buyers who bought everything they had. I got every financial newsletter who had entrepreneurs and professionals as subscribers who would want to grow their businesses to partner and promote me. I got Success Magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine, all the airline magazines to partner with me. I got all the conference companies to do it. And they put all the goodwill, all the distribution, all the reach, all the trust, all the databases, all their power of their endorsement, and we shared revenues. So the answer to you is I can give you great marketing and sales, I can give you great positioning, but instead of doing any of that, just partner on as many ways with as many people, with as many parts of your methodology as you need to, because there's always going to be somebody else who has a gap, who has a need, who has a void, who has a drop in business, who has access to an audience that's not fully capitalizing. Figure out who they are, where they are, why they are, and then just partner.
Partnering with performers. I love this. And I've already written down parts of this project and ready to start the outreach soon. Thank you, Jay. That put a big smile on my face and it just confirmed the strategy.
You're welcome.
Okay, 2 more questions. You ready?
Sure.
Okay, so 3 actually. 2 quick ones and then a big one at the end. When you look back at your incredible career, what do you hope your greatest legacy will be in the world of marketing and business success when you leave this world behind?
That I've been able to help passionate entrepreneurs who deep down were on a mission to add value, to fill voids or bring greater advantage to their market, didn't always know it, but I helped them to be preeminent. I've helped them gain enormously great satisfaction, fulfillment, purpose, and contribution. And in the process, their whole life trajectory has changed, and not just financially, and that they've ended up being much happier, much more prosperous, much more impactful, and their values and their ethos has risen. And I've been able to do it. I don't know. I did it in Japan. I've done it in China. I've done it in Malaysia. Done it in Vietnam. Done it in Italy. Done it in France. Done it in the UK. Done it in Jesus, all over. I can't remember what place was Singapore, Ireland, Thailand, and it's been very. So, we got success stories that are pretty profound, and the successes aren't just financial. They're that we've changed how people conduct business. We've changed the cultures of organizations. We've given people purpose, possibility, and a lot more passion. And so I've created not just money for people, but a lot more fulfillment in ways that money alone really can't and won't achieve.
Beautiful, buddy. A lot of heart in there. Thank you for sharing. If you could pass on one universal principle to every entrepreneur, what would it be?
I think Stephen Covey said it, is listen before you try to be heard.
Oh, I love that. Very pertinent for myself as a public speaker. I think that's very good. Thank you very much. And here's my last question for you. So straight off the cuff, are you ready? Okay. I want you to imagine now, Jay Abraham, that you are on the world stage. Every sentient being alive is present, listening and tuning in to what you are about to say. And when you're ready, take a breath and please do share, Jay. What is your message to the world right now?
Wow. I think I gotta envision this. I gotta go into state for a minute, so bear with me.
Take your time.
I think it's to re-ground yourself to the meaning of life is contribution. And contribution is interpreted and defined many ways. We've watched, that just listening to somebody when they talked and not trying to step on them and showing them you heard them, or smiling, or taking time to just, to be patient, that has enriched other people. I think it's that the meaning of life is contribution, and contribution is defined in a multitude of different dimensions. That's probably it.
Oh, I love the giving back. After so many years in business, so much wealth, so much innovation, and so much transformation for businesses and people around the world, he ends it on the contribution note. I want to say that's absolutely perfect. Jay Abraham, really appreciating you today. I know your time is valuable, to say the least, and you've taken the time to really educate and inspire us today. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, it's great. It's great. I mean, I think my career has stood mostly for doing business at a much higher strata of everything: respect, contribution, innovation in terms of my definition, not just technological. And if you're at a point in your career, your life, your relationship where it's not working, maybe some of the elements that I've shared, you can interpret them through the lens of your body of work. But I think I said this, I hope I said this, I can't remember, is 2% of what goes on in a life are acts of God. You can't control it. Everything else, you really, you're either in control or being controlled. And if you don't want to be controlled, then you have to take control. And there are, there are causes and effects to almost everything.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. Thank you. I'll be watching and listening to this over and over again until it drops in, and I'll be applying both the research, the market research, and also, of course, the joint venture / partnering with performers strategy that you've talked about today. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, Jay Abraham, look him up. I mean, go to social media, look it up on YouTube. If you spend half a day on YouTube looking up Jay Abraham, I can guarantee you that you're going to come away with some pretty freaking cool strategies. And that is up to each and every one of you to apply. Again, Jay Abraham, everybody. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.